you got? Like some sort of statue behind you that you didn't?
Yeah, man. Hey, that's my statue of you, Nick. That's covered up that I'm going to unveil at the end of the episode.
Kind of strange.
So I made a little technical mess up there. So before the show, my power went out in my garage here because I was trying to boil coffee, and I missed the button and didn't start the feed. So we're now live. We weren't live before.
Are you? I take everything.
I know
Everything I'm said
sorry,
complimentary
Logan.
Towards you. I take back. It's a complete show.
Wait, what are you talking about? You mirrored him at the IPCPR. You did the same thing. Logan was taking down my booth with his coffee making.
Hey, first off, just because you were too cheap to upgrade to have the right sort of power to power the coffee and listen to your Woon Chang and Ching Chong crap, but I couldn't run my dang coffee machine.
All right, public enema. Public enema.
Public
enema.
All
right, Logan, let me do an introduction here, so the people who are watching live can at least have an idea of what they're watching.
Are we live?
We are actually live now. I can see it on the Facebooks. Welcome to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. I almost said Cigar Chat there because we've got some special guests, which we don't usually have on Sharing Our Pairings. But we're here with Nick Melillo and Logan Lawler. Nick, of course, is from Foundation Cigar Company. And Logan, if for some reason you haven't been paying attention to Cigar Federation very closely for the last 5 years, Logan used to be the owner and head, the MF CEO of Cigar Federation. And he has since sold the company and moved to his own brand new business of Layne Coffee. So we're here to talk about the partnership between Nick and Logan for Foundation Coffee.
Man.
We're here smoking the Wiseman Maduro, and we're drinking some Layne Coffee. I'm starting with the Wiseman here. So I'm actually going to change it up from what we did before we were actually live. I'm going to talk about my coffee first, and then let you talk about it. So I did 4 different coffee method kind of things.
Did you really?
I got crazy. Yeah. It was
that's way too much work.
Yeah, the moment the power went out, I was like, I messed up. I shouldn't have done all this work. But I'm starting with, this is cold brew. It's about 16 hours. So cold brew is like my jam.
On which one? The Wiseman or the Teslin? Okay.
The Wiseman. So this is a 16-hour cold brew. I just if you've never made cold brew before, it's insanely easy. You grind a bunch of coffee as coarse as you can. Basically, you barely even have to measure. I mean, you can, but you really don't have to.
What ratio do you use? I usually try to go 1 ounce of coffee between 10 to 13 ounces of water.
I've never measured it in ounces, actually. I measure my coffee in metric.
Why does everybody do that? We live in America. Just get with the program.
Math a little bit easier.
Take it easy.
But I do about 1/3 by volume. So I just eyeball it. Like I fill up a mason jar 1/3 with coffee grounds, fill the rest with water, let it rip. And then you just filter out the grounds and you end up with this magic juice.
So good.
And then cold brew is crazy strong. The longer you let it sit, the stronger it is. This isn't too strong. So this is like my normal way to drink cold brew, which is about 1/3 milk and 2/3 coffee.
Okay. I usually just do a shot, just a little boop of milk, just let it rage.
It depends on the cold brew. Like this one I didn't really taste, so I did just kind of do my normal 2 parts 1 part thing.
Okay.
But I'll taste it straight here.
Just straight. Let's hear your thoughts. I want to hear is it going to make your top 10 coffee list?
Well, I don't have a top 10 coffee list, but if I did, it might actually. Like you mentioned lemon before, and I am getting there's a lot of lemon in this.
Right.
But my palate's a little jacked up, so I may be tasting weird stuff.
Yo, sir.
I hope I don't mess you guys up here, but could you give, just a basic rundown for novices of brewing coffee, the different styles of brewing coffee, kind of do's and don'ts?
Like different methods?
Good idea.
I know, cigars really well, but any means don't have the experience, of course, with coffee as I do with tobacco, but how to cut a cigar, how to just
deal, yeah.
Do's and don'ts of.
Okay, I'm gonna drop about 3 or 4 things that right now, if you pay attention and take good notes, will take your coffee enjoyment experience from about a 1 to about an 8 on a 10-point scale. No, I'm being dead serious.
I believe you.
Yeah, it's just true. First thing is, don't buy pre-ground coffee
ever.
For the love of God. Yep. It would be like an analogy of leaving your cigar outside of a humidor and expecting it to be good 2 weeks later. Like, go and buy a $50 grinder. I mean, I won't tell you what my grinder cost because it's way too much, but you don't need to go crazy. Get either a Hario, like a hand grinder, or buy $100 or $50 to $100 manual grinder or automatic grinder, because once you grind the coffee, you've got, matter of hours before all the aroma and the essence and the goodness of that coffee is going away. Next thing is that people try to get all fancy and, put their coffee in these fancy, like sexy looking jars and all this kind of stuff, or they have a big hopper on top of their coffee grinder that's not sealed. The best thing you can do is leave your whole bean coffee in somewhere that's comfortable, maybe a cabinet away from humidity in the dark. That'll make your coffee last much longer. Next thing is buy fresh roasted coffee. And that does not mean going and buying something from the grocery store with a Folgers brand on it that's got a vacuum seal on it. That is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is buying coffee that's been roasted within a couple of days, a week, 4 days, 5 days, because coffee, cigars are perishable in a sense, but coffee is the best from the time you roast, from about 4 days up to about 30 days. It can go longer, but that's when you're going to have the peak amount of flavor. It's kind of like wine, right? Wine.
I would compare it to beer.
Okay, I don't know.
It's like a hoppy beer. Okay. I mean, Logan doesn't know beer, but we talk a lot about how with a hoppy beer, the moment it's done, it only gets worse.
Okay, yeah, similar.
And that's kind of how coffee is. Like, it's got a very finite lifespan.
Yep, exactly. So try to buy fresh roasted coffee. And then, but this is the biggest tip. If you didn't hear anything else that I just said, this is the absolute big one, is that most people don't do this. Even Tripp, I already asked Tripp this question. If you're paying attention, he didn't say, is weigh your coffee before you brew it. Weigh your water and coffee. The golden ratio, and I'll just talk about drip because it's the easiest, is that when you're making a drip coffee, most people say, I'm going to put in 3 scoops and then I just put in some water. Absolutely not. That's how cavemen do it. We're in the 21st century now. Go grab a scale. And what I want you to do as a test is grind 1 ounce of coffee by weight on a medium grind. And then in your drip coffee maker, put 17.5 ounces, or 17, it doesn't matter, 17.5 ounces of water by weight in your drip coffee maker. And tell me if it does not taste better.
So say the ratio again.
1 ounce of coffee, ground coffee by weight, to 17.5 ounces of water by weight. So Nick can attest at IPCPR, when I was making coffee, I literally had scales and all types of stuff going on trying to make drip coffee. The reason why is that if you've ever had coffee and you're it's bitter, right? You're oh my God, that's bitter. That's because the water you put, you over extracted it, right? It's basically it's a bad thing. You got too much coffee. I mean, there's a range that you want to be in. So if you try that coffee and you're wow, this isn't, quite as strong, well, then maybe drop the ratio down to 1 ounce of coffee to 16 ounces of water, and you can tweak with it. But once you find that ratio that works for you, boom. But that is the place to start, and that will make your it's the same thing for a Chemex. It's the same thing for a French press. Use that ratio and your coffee enjoyment will be infinitely better.
1 to 17.5 is applicable for pretty much everything but cold brew. Cold brew, you just need.
Well, espresso is a little different. Cold brew, and then but everything else is pretty applicable.
a thing that will surprise people is like the color of the coffee that comes out. Mm-hmm. It's not like that black ooze that you're used to drinking. Right. It's going to be more of like a dark amber kind of color.
Yep. Exactly.
If you're using that kind of ratio.
And that makes all the difference, man. It's all about extracting your coffee correctly. I mean, you could take the best coffee in the world, not saying, you know, the foundation coffees are the best in the world, but they're pretty darn good. But you can make that wrong, and people will, I mean, we've even had people say, oh, this coffee's not that good. And I ask them, I say, hey, how did you make it? And then they tell me some nonsense about they put 2 scoops in and, you know, just filled it up. Just telling you, use the ratio and your coffee enjoyment will be infinitely better.
But this ratio, you came, like, how did you come to this ratio? Was this?
Well, it's called a thing called the internet. And, no,
but I'm just curious, like that seems to be the
that's, I mean, I've read a lot, right? I mean, and that's the ratio. I mean, there's a lot of science behind it because you're trying to extract the amount of dissolved solids out of the coffee. And I've read, not papers, like scientific papers, but people who've done studies who have spectrometers and stuff who can actually read out to say, this is the starting ratio that gets you in the range. Now, some beans obviously have, you know, a lighter roast. You might have to adjust or up or down or whatever, but that's kind of where you want to be. I mean, it's kind of like if you're fermenting tobacco, Nick, you know, kind of where you want to be, the starting point, but then you kind of adjust based on, you know, you're trying to do a little bit darker Maduro, or you're trying to put a little bit more sweetness or whatever, right? You can adjust it. Very similar.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key, is to be able to, you know, the balance of, you know, again, great lead in, I guess, to the Wiseman Maduro was to get the body, the strength, you know, spice it without being overwhelming on the palate, not being bitter, you know, not attacking your palate in an aggressive way. So you're really able to enjoy all the flavors.
Exactly.
And we've got a couple audience questions and comments about this part. Bob Langmaid, Bob Dog.
Bob Dog! What's up, homie?
How many scoops of ground coffee are usually in 1 ounce? And I'm going to answer that one and say it doesn't matter. It's never going to be the same. Every time you scoop, it's going to be a little different. I got the scale that I used to have. I have a nicer one now, but the scale I used to have was like $8 on Amazon.
That's what I'm saying.
Drop like $8 or $10. Order a digital scale, like something like this, and it'll change your life when it comes to coffee.
It's true, man. I mean, and plus the other thing is that when you go with different methods of brewing, right? Like, and I'll just give you the range. Tripp was talking about cold brew. Cold brew is like coarse. Like, it's almost like little chunks of gravel.
As coarse as you can get it.
Coarse as you can get it. Because you want it that coarse because you're letting the coffee contact with the water for so long. If you were to do a finer, you would over extract the crap out of it. It would taste like junk. Well, on the other hand, with espresso, the water touches the coffee for 30 seconds, approximately 35 seconds. So you have to have a really fine grind to be able to extract it out, right? So the key is that even if you did a scoop of really coarse coffee to really fine coffee, it's going to be completely different. So just get out your scale, or you can just go, if you want to go high class, go out and get a really awesome dose grinder that actually has a built-in scale on it and will tell you how long you need to do it, like I do, and it really simplifies things.
Fancy pants.
How much is that grinder?
Yeah.
Should I say? I mean, it's about $250.
That's not. I mean, that's coming out in a minute. I'm good. Yeah.
But you can go way higher. I mean, there's grinders in the thousands.
Yeah, well, and speaking of grinders, there's actually the next audience comment that I wanted to talk about.
Don't use a blade grinder, for the love of God.
John Aiken says he just upgraded to a burr grinder from a blade grinder, and it makes a huge difference.
Yes, it does.
I mean, I did that years ago, and it's an unbelievable difference. Like, you wouldn't, you know, it's just like having a scale. It changes the way you think about coffee.
Well, absolutely.
A blade grinder is a blade. It's like a mixer. It's like a whirly bird. It does not control how you grind it. And if you look at it, you've got some really big pieces, some really small pieces. A burr grinder actually uses canonical metal burrs that are actually designed to spin like this, so it actually precisely grinds your coffee.
And when you're adjusting it, you're moving those closer together. Exactly. So you're getting a very specific grind size.
Exactly. And I mean, the analogy I would use blade grinder versus, a burr or a blade versus burr grinder is, those really crappy plastic cutters with a single blade that you get like in a cigar events. That's a burr grinder. A Zycar that's a blade grinder. A Zycar cutter is a burr grinder. Just think about cutting your cigar. That's the difference.
Yeah, I would even go further than that. Like, a blade grinder is kind of like using scissors on a cigar. Like, not cigar scissors, just regular, like, your daughter's scissors for cutting paper. Like, it's not built to do that job well at all.
And they're not expensive, right?
They're really not.
A proper burr grinder is not that expensive. You can get a nice ceramic one for probably $40, and that's the Hario. It's the hand grinder. I use that one all the time.
Yeah, it's a good grinder.
All right, so now that we've gone through coffee school, we're going to take one quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about the Wiseman Coffee.
Okay.
Brought to you by Gurkha Cigars. Gurkha Cigars, makers of the world's finest cigars. Try the 93 rated Heritage featuring Rosado, Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, and Dominican, Pennsylvania, and Nicaraguan fillers. Blended by Gurkha's blending team at American Caribbean Cigars, it is hand-rolled Nicaraguan, available in 35-count boxes. Talk to your local B&M about the Heritage today, or talk to them about other fine Gurkha cigars. Whatever your taste preference is, Gurkha has a cigar that's right for you.
Yeah.
All right, and we're back. So before we talk about the coffees we're drinking tonight a little bit more, we're actually going to go over some different brewing methods. So I've used tonight, I already talked about the cold brew a little bit. Then I also used 2 different pour over methods that are pretty much the same.
What, Chemex and a Hario?
No,
V60?
I actually used a what is the name? The one where it's got like a V shape. The Melillo.
Yeah, okay.
So I used the Melillo, which is also known as Bee House.
Okay.
And then I used basically a metal knockoff of a Chemex.
Okay.
So that is this thing here.
You use the cozy cone.
Oh,
Sure.
nice.
And then the last method I used was my mocha pot.
Man, mocha pots stump me.
I know,
don't know
you can
why.
figure them out, huh?
I've got all types of coffee gear. The only thing I don't have, brew method wise, is I don't have an iBrick for Turkish coffee. Just because when I'm going to get one now because I've got a grinder that can grind, because that's like the finest grind. I mean, it's literally
It's insanely fine.
like talcum powder. But I have a grinder that can do it now, and so I'm going to get one of those. And then the only other one that I don't have, actually. I have a Technivorm. I've got a siphon. Yeah, I've got every other brew method except for I cannot get a mocha pot to work. Like, I always screw it up.
All right. Well, let's talk about some different methods, and then I'll talk about mocha pots because I'm pretty good at that one.
About it. You talk about that one. I don't care. Yeah.
You want me to start with mocha pots? I figured we start with like drip.
Let's start with the most common being drip.
Dude, you're the best.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you so much.
Drip is what I would say probably 90% of the people use, right? Like a Mr. Coffee or whatever. I mean, a drip pot is the most simple form, and that's really an example of the ratio, right? That I was talking about. That's the 1 ounce of coffee ground to 17.5 ounces of water. I mean, the other key thing is try to use filtered water if you can, if it's possible. I mean, if you can't, whatever, but try to use filtered water. But yeah, I mean, drip is like kind of in the middle, right? Where depending on, it really kind of affects kind of the body and clarity of a coffee, right? Like, for example, with the cold brew, like I'll give you an example, is like you take let's do like the Tabernacle, right? It's from Ethiopia. It's from the Harar region. It's very fruity. It's very acidic. It's very bright. Well, if you brew that in a cold brew, because of the extraction, you actually lose a lot of that acidity, and you kind of see more kind of the flavor. Where on the opposite side, if you're doing an espresso with it, which I wouldn't recommend with a straight Harar, that would just be bananas. But basically, all you're doing is getting a shot of like really acidic coffee. So drip is a place where if you want to see kind of a balance of the acidity, body, and flavor, the drip is right where you want to be. It's very middle of the road, right? Like I would consider it not a Connecticut. It's not a full body, but it's a nice medium plus cigar in body and strength. It's right in the middle. What else do you want to talk about drips, man? Like, I don't know. Do you want me to go in how you plug them in, or what do you want me to talk about?
I don't think you need to talk too much more about drips. I mean, most people know how drip works. Why don't you talk about pour over a little bit? Pour over is my favorite method. It's kind of I think the purest kind of method of making drip style coffee.
It's the purest method, but it's also the biggest pain in the butt. I think it's such a pain because you're going to have a kettle, like a gooseneck kettle, that you actually can know the temperature of the coffee that you're having. So you can't get really a super cheap one. You're not going to get like your mama's teapot that would go whoop when it got so hot. You don't want one of those. But I mean, there's a lot of different ones, right? There's the Chemex, which is glass that uses the paper filters. I mean, you've got, like you were saying, you've got a Hario, which is kind of a ceramic that uses a filter as well. You've got the Cozy Cone that Tripp's using. I mean, there's a lot of different styles, but it's very similar to a drip. But it's instead of it being
style,
yeah, exactly. But instead of it being
all over myself,
instead of it being, you put the grounds in, just let her rip. It's literally, I mean, I'll tell you, I use my Chemex. You put in your 1 ounce of coffee. You'll take your approximately 195 degree water, your gooseneck it in the filter, and you basically let it bloom, which you put about, for example, if you have an ounce of coffee, I usually put in about an ounce worth of water. And you have to put the Chemex on the scale so you know how much water you're putting in the pot. That's very important. So, and it blooms. Basically what that does is that fresh roasted coffee, it's fresh. When you do that, it'll bloom. Like, it's like, basically think of like rising dough bread, right? Like it'll come up, there'll be bubbles. That's how you know it's fresh, because that's basically the coffee off-gassing carbon dioxide, which actually makes coffee taste like crap. So that's why you want to do that. And then you just, from then pour in the rest of your water and just let it drip, and it just drips down and it works well. I mean, I like my Chemex. I don't use it a lot just because, I don't know, I'm kind of an espresso guy now and a French press guy, but it's a good method. I mean, it's easy. It's easy to throw away the filter. It's easy cleanup. And I think pour overs specifically with Nick's coffee, so the foundation coffees, the Nicaragua, you can really use it in any brew method you want. I mean, I think it's pretty versatile. But definitely the Tabernacle is the best in a pour over style, Chemex, Hario, or whatever you like, because it really brings out a lot of the fruity flavors and the acidity as well. Yeah, that's brew method.
And what about? I mean, everybody knows what espresso is, kind of, right?
I would hope so.
Espresso,
it's hard. It is hard to make a good espresso. And don't kid yourself, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, but if your machine, first of all, people think I'm going to go out and buy a $1,000 espresso machine. Okay, that's cool. But if you don't go buy a $500 grinder, then you might as well just throw away that $1,000. I mean, it's pointless. Like, it's actually more important to have a good grinder. Like, because that espresso is so finicky. I mean, I'll give you an example, is that I was doing some espresso testing today for Layne, and then I also had the test blend that we can talk about later for Nick, for maybe an upcoming coffee release, I don't know. And we can talk about, maybe Nick will talk about it if he's paying attention, but he's not. And I was using that, and on that grinder, literally, I mean, you would think it tells me, the average range for espresso, you start at 20. Well, dude, when I was pulling pretty decent shots of the Nicaragua, it was more like 24. But then the stuff that I was doing, the test blend, which is a dark roast, but I won't tell you what it is yet. But I mean, it was down on 16. So it is completely crazy in terms of how finicky it is. But it's one of those things, if you do it right, and I mean, I've heard people call it this, and I'll call it myself, but you pull a God shot where you take it and you're like, holy bejesus, this thing is delicious. I think coffee is its best in espresso if you can do it right. But and the window to do it right is so small. It's like entering the atmosphere on the Challenger. Like, you have a very small window, you're bouncing it off.
With the grinder thing, like, if you use a blade grinder, God forbid, or even like a $50 burr grinder, $100 burr grinder, no matter what kind of espresso machine you're using, it's not going to be optimal.
Nope.
But you can get a really good shot of espresso out of like $100 espresso machine if you got a good enough grinder.
Yeah, the machine. Yeah, I mean, the machine. I mean, I I have a $500 espresso
difference,
machine,
but
it's just get bells and whistles. Like you get the double broiler, right? You get like bells and whistles, but you have a couple $100 espresso machine and have a $200 grinder, you'll be doing all right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then I'll talk about the mocha pot since
I just
don't know how to use it.
Not good.
So
I
mocha
didn't
pots
realize that mocha pot is I call
Your
it
favorite.
Bialetti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bialetti.
Yeah.
A
I
Bialetti
just
mocha
forget that
express.
that's what I use.
They come in 150 different sizes. They're generally made in Italy. This is what they call a 3-cup, which makes this much coffee. I would guess it's like
visuals.
maybe 4 ounces.
Okay.
So, I mean, a mocha pot cannot be easier to use. You grind
That's
it
not true.
very fine, but not the finest it'll go. Like you want almost an espresso grind, but maybe not quite. And you can see that it does end up looking kind of like Turkish coffee. So I mean, if you went further than espresso grind, it might work. This is just as fine as mine goes. You fill the little basket up to the brim. I'm not going to take it apart, but there's a little basket in here that's got like a spigot that sticks down. You fill the bottom with water up to here. This is a little valve that pops open so it doesn't explode if you pack it too much. You just fill the little basket with coffee. You don't press it down. Screw the top on, stick it on the stove, and then as soon as it starts coming up, like you'll see it bubbling up inside of here and kind of filling up this carafe in the top. As soon as you see that start happening, you turn the heat down a little bit, and then once you hear it kind of like petering out, sputtering, you just take it right off and pour it.
It's the most complicated thing ever.
It's so easy, and it makes like a fake espresso. Like in Italy, they call it espresso. It's really not espresso.
No, it's not.
But it's kind of like a fake espresso where it's as strong as espresso, but it's a little grittier. You end up with kind of that silt in the bottom of the cup, which I kind of
love.
Yeah, I kind of like that. It's just part of the charm of the mocha pot method.
I don't know how you could call that very dead.
I just think I don't know. I just can't ever get it to work. Like, because everyone in the cigar industry drinks Cuban coffee. So I tried to mess with it, but dude, I'd boil it over. I'd have like hot coffee shooting out the top like a rocket. Like it's just a mess, man.
That just means it's too hot, man.
It's not. I can't. That's the problem. Is that I think the reason that I struggle with it is that like with my espresso machine and all these others, I'm using scales and I've got it down to a science, right?
Yeah.
With a mocha pot, there's really not a lot of science to it.
No, there's no science.
I mean, it's no science, and you can't really control the heat or how fast it goes up, and that's what I don't like about it.
You have to use the force. You got to put your shield, the
exactly
goes
the
up,
welding mask down. The welding mask down.
Exactly. He's turned off his deflector shields or something.
Dude,
like
I'm telling you, mocha pots are dangerous. But I will say is that if you can make a good mocha pot, go ahead.
And you get the old, great grandmas, and they've been doing it for a long time. They can make a hell of a cup of coffee. Like you said, it's a little bit stronger than your average cup and a little grittier, but
a little more bitter.
tasty.
It's like, it's kind of like espresso. That's bitter. Not. It doesn't have that foam.
It doesn't have
and that creamy element that espresso has, but it's kind of got that like extra strong, gritty, extra bitter flavor that you get from espresso. I really like it, and they're cheap. They're like I think I paid like $12 for this thing, and they're made out of solid aluminum, and they last forever.
I broke
like
one
Nick
in
was saying,
3 months.
How? I mean, like Nick was saying,
the handle burned off.
Get them hand-me-downs, like from their.
The handle literally popped off, and I spilled coffee all over my counter.
You let it get way too hot, dog.
I burned
so this top part should never get hot enough that it's going to burn you.
Wow.
Like the only time it should really get hot is when there's coffee in it. It should never heat up from the stove, which is your problem. You let it heat up through the entire thing, and it melts your handle.
Pretty sweet gas range. I can't help it, man.
And to be fair, those handles are made out of Bakelite, which is really good for heat resistance.
Well, I broke it off because it was too hot. Let's just say that.
Next time I'm in Texas, I'm going to teach you.
When you're down, dude, I've got the coffee set up, man. You come down.
All right, so now we've gone through kind of all the different methods. Let's get on to talking about the coffee. So like I said before, I've got the cold brew here, and then I've got the pour over of the Wiseman. So let's talk about the Wiseman.
Okay, so it's single origin from Malagapa. It is probably, if you were going to buy a coffee from Foundation Coffee, it's the most versatile. You can do espresso, you can do cold brew, it'll work in pour over, it'll work in drip. It's just a very, very, very versatile coffee. It's roasted to about I'd say a medium, a little bit past first cracks, and it's just got a nice kind of citric acidity, a little bit of caramel. It's just smooth, sweet. It's kind of got a little creamy body, which works well for espresso. Frankly, man, it's a very, very good coffee that anyone can enjoy, I think.
What do you think of it, Dennis? I know you're drinking it over there, and you barely talked this entire episode.
So, all right. So my brew method for the Wiseman was actually Chemex. And I went for, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 25 grams of coffee to 350 grams of water.
Grams.
Yeah, grams. Not sure how many ounces that is. But
that's very strong.
That's what I have in this cup.
Okay.
And so it's pretty strong. I figured usually I drink a little bit stronger coffee. I like it. I think it's really accessible. I feel like if I put this into the drip, I would have enjoyed it the same as if I put it into the AeroPress. If I used a mocha pot, it would have been exactly the same in terms of my enjoyment of it, in terms of the flavor profile. And actually, I didn't expect it to be Nicaraguan. I was really surprised with that, pleasantly surprised.
Very atypical Nicaraguan.
Yes,
most Nicaraguans,
absolutely.
They just roast the piss out of them. They're grown up high, and they roast the piss out of them because they're dark roasted. Nobody cares, right? But if you can find a Nicaraguan that you can do medium, it's a good Nicaraguan. We didn't go skinny. We didn't go chintzy with Foundation Coffee. I'll tell you that. No expense was spared.
Got to get the good stuff.
We have to get the good stuff. So that's the Nicaraguan. I would say that, and the idea with each coffee, right? Because there's the Wiseman, there's the Tabernacle, there's the Upsetters, and the All-In. Other than the All-In, the rest of them were designed to be paired with, but really accentuate the experience of the cigars they represented, right? And they try to tie back in, right? So, for example, the Wiseman original. This was before the Wiseman Maduro technically came out, but the Wiseman Maduro, or the original Wiseman, Nicaraguan Puro. This is all Nicaraguan, right? The Tabernacle, the whole thing behind it is, Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, et cetera, and boom. It's an Ethiopian from Harar, basically the cradle of civilization.
Which is interesting. The Ethiopian actually is, the Harar region is where Haile Selassie on the box of Tabernacle was born. So I thought that was a good
it was a good fit.
Correlation.
It is.
And of course, coffee.
Ethiopian coffee is fantastic.
Yes.
I'll tell you, though, it's expensive. It's a pain to roast, too. It's my least favorite to roast. I'll say that.
Yeah. It's the origins of coffee,
It is.
So it's interesting that from there it sort of, entered the Arab world and, Red Sea, Mediterranean, and that the priest would actually use it to, stay up at night and actually pray, which is sort of initially it was the goats.
The goat herder, man.
Goat herder, and you would notice the goats eating the berry bushes, and they would call them the laughing goats because they would sort of get a little spastic after eating these berry bushes. And I think it sort of developed into a porridge kind of stew, and then
it was
eventually the beans started to be extracted, roasted, and which is interesting. I'm here in Connecticut. There's a local Ethiopian restaurant on the Yale University campus. It's pretty traditional. If you go to super traditional Ethiopian restaurants, they usually bring out coffee as like a ceremony with frankincense and myrrh burning.
Oh, wow.
At the coffee.
That's pretty cool.
It's quite an experience. And Logan, you should actually check out the way they brew, the traditional pots that they use. And to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure how they're roasting.
It's more the copper, right?
Really
it's like the copper little things. It's more like Yemenis, right? They come out in little copper pots. Is that what you're talking about?
From what I've seen, like clay ones actually.
Okay.
Is the ones that I've seen, the real traditional ones that I've seen, a lot of them are clay.
Okay.
The whole dining experience, a lot of people think till this day it's ingrained in our minds, just Ethiopia, and you hear, food and, people immediately think about starvation and, what happened in Ethiopia post 1974. Post 1974 is what pretty much everybody knows about Ethiopia, especially our generation. Whereas if you speak anybody before our generation, your parents, grandparents, many of them know Haile Selassie, which is on the box, and know a different history of Ethiopia. But after 1974, there was a great famine. The communists took over, and things got really bad. But if you never had a chance to eat Ethiopian, I highly recommend it because it's food is delicious. Everything's served out of the same plate, and then the coffee ceremony is a really nice treat at the end of the meal. Like it's a special. Coffee is highly sacred amongst the Ethiopian culture. So, and if you like strong coffee, stuff is muddy. I've never drank like the coffee in the Middle East and Yemen, and I hear like Turkey and stuff. That this stuff is really, muddy and
it's dense
and thick and dense. Yeah.
It's basically like you grind it up. The grind is so fine that you basically are drinking a solution of water and coffee. It's kind of like instant coffee that doesn't necessarily dissolve all the way. It's kind of what it is.
Which is sort of like when I was talking about mocha pot. It's almost how mocha pot works.
Kind of,
not quite.
Yeah.
We actually have a viewer question that I forgot to get to.
Because I've seen a documentary.
Sorry, Nick.
I'm getting off in tangents. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm getting off in tangents and I'm sort of eating as I haven't eaten all day, so I'm sneaking here.
All right, you eat a little bit while Logan answers this question.
Okay.
Rage Bob.
Harley Holmes wants to know.
Hello, Harley.
What's the difference between using cold water and hot water? His grandma always made them use cold water whenever they made her tea. Is there a difference?
Like, I don't know a lot about tea. I mean...
Well, I mean, when you're boiling water, is it better to start with hot or start with cold?
I mean, I've always just used whatever comes out of. It's always been cold because it's always filtered, right? I mean, honestly, I don't know. That's a great question. The only thing
I actually know the answer.
Okay, well, you can say it. The only reason I would say not to do hot water is because some of the stuff that you're, especially if you have high-end equipment like the Bonavita that I use, you're not going to want to put hot water into that machine because the reservoir is plastic. And I mean, that's the reason I would say no, but I don't know if scientifically there's a reason not to, other than you might be over extracting it to begin with.
So there's not a scientific reason. I also always start with cold water simply because that's what comes out of my fridge from the filter.
Right.
The reason that previous generations always used cold water is because hot water going through the pipes, the hot water pipes tended to be more like the copper pipes and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So they would actually chemicals and heavy metals and stuff would seep out into the hot water, but not in the cold water. So the hot water pipes were not quite poisonous, but they weren't they weren't
like Flint, Michigan high. They weren't Flint, Michigan bad.
Yeah, they weren't Flint, Michigan. But the water that was coming out of the cold pipes was more pure than the water coming out.
Was cleaner. And that's the idea. You want to have the cleanest water you can with the least amount of impurity. So that makes total sense. I didn't know that.
Yeah. There was that was on Mythbusters or something where they tested how long it takes to boil cold water compared to hot water or something like that. And that was the explanation that they gave.
That's interesting.
So I've been drinking, I mean, I'm not going to sleep tonight. I've been drinking. I'm like
How
halfway.
about filling up ice cube?
Filling up ice cube trays. Well, that was
do that.
I used to do that.
Hot water or cold water?
Oh, cold water always.
No, I think warm water. They don't.
Did you always use warm water?
I don't
Oh,
know.
I don't know.
Why? Because the steam comes off of them and like creates like a barrier or something, so they don't stick together.
I don't know, but back in the day, my roommate would say I would always use cold water, and the ice cubes would stick to the plastic ice tray all the time. Like it wouldn't come out clean. And whenever you used warm water, it was never an issue.
Huh. I don't know. Maybe there's something with the molecular density of it when it's warm or something. I have no idea.
Never looked it up either.
Science.
Oh, here we go.
Interesting.
Victor Lucatorto says he's in the Facebook comments. This isn't a scientist that I'm reading his research paper.
Vic, what's happening?
He says that hot water is stored obviously in your hot water tank, and the warmth pulls metals from the tank into the water.
Yeah, unless you have a tankless water heater, son, like me.
I mean, then it's pulling metals from your tankless water heater, from all those copper pipes that are weaving out through there.
Probably true.
And Bob Langmaid says the chemicals are how you get unique flavors.
That's how you get. That's the sauce, man. That's the secret sauce.
I actually thought when you mentioned ice cubes, I thought you meant like leftover coffee put into an ice cube tray and then
People do that.
Have like coffee ice, because I do that all the time.
People do that. I mean, I think
I never have leftover coffee.
Well,
that sounds great. Actually,
that's true. It's not a bad idea. The thing I would say is that, and this is a tip for everyone, is that I drink espresso, right? And I'll drink my French press, and I'll drink a lot of different stuff. But I'd say it's a good mix between hot and cold brew. But I mean, it gets so hot here in Austin most of the time it's cold, right? Like where I want to drink something cold, not something hot, except for now when it's freezing. But one thing I've noticed is that like if you take drip coffee, if you can't reheat like a drip coffee, right? Like you just can't do it. But with cold brew, you could actually heat that up and you're not messing it up. So I would tell you, as if you were going to do that, I would cold brew a big batch and then put it in ice cubes, because then you have the option of whether you want to warm it up, and what you can do, or you can drink it cold. But that would be just my suggestion.
Good call.
I know it. I'm full of useless knowledge.
So I've been drinking this one from the Mocha Pot. I really like this coffee. I think I would hazard a guess. Is this the coffee that's meant to go with the Wiseman Maduro?
Is that the test blend?
Yeah, because that's what it makes me think of. Like it's got like that rich chocolatiness that goes really well with the cigar.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. I'll let Nick do all the talking because it's his company and all that. I'm just the monkey behind the scenes with the roaster over my shoulder with a blanket on it, just doing his bidding. But we have been playing around with some blends, obviously. Coffee is not restricted like the FDA. So we can come up with cool stuff. And we're going to do some cool things this year. But I'll let Nick, because nothing's final yet. We're still playing around. But I'll let Nick talk about the blend. I sent them, Nick, it was the number. Hold on. Let me get out my blend sheet here.
What are you talking about?
I sent them the Wiseman, and then I sent them the dark roast blend that we were working on. It was the number 4 from, I don't want to say what country.
Yeah, and the number 1? No.
The number 1, I didn't send them number 1 but you drank number 1 and said I like number 1. Then you tried number 4 and I said you're going to like number 4 and you did. So I sent them number 4.
It's not Guatemala, is it?
No, it's not. Wrong continent, brother. Right hemisphere.
Okay.
But wrong.
Actually, I mean, I'll let you talk about that blend. I mean,
how much you want me to tell? Because I don't.
Not too much.
I won't. Okay, just tease it.
I would love to hear their feedback as to what
What do you think? No BS. What do you think of the coffee? First off,
I like it.
You said you like it. You said
I'm not typically a fan of dark roasts, but I think this one's pretty good. It's got a good sweetness, and it's not even with the Mocha Pot. It's not super overly bitter. It's got like a more sweet chocolatey kind of feel to it.
That's kind of where I was at.
Okay.
What about you, Dennis?
So I'm just taking a couple of sips of it now. I had it when it was hot, and I'm in my basement, so it's pretty cold down here, and it's actually basically ice cold right now in my cup. And you know what? I have to say, cold and hot, it tastes really good. The body on it is probably the thing that gets me the most. It's not overpowering. It has some body. It's one of those coffees like I can brew it in the morning and I'm good to go. I don't have to really think about it too much. And it does have a lot of that chocolate. And I also noticed what I like for me, I use a hand grinder. So beans that are super hard, I can't stand. They're a pain in the ass, right? Yeah. These beans are really nice and soft, easy to grind.
They are very nice.
And even if I had a really crappy grinder, I could still get a good grind out of it.
It's true. So yeah, it's a coffee without divulging everything, but it is. You guys pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's a coffee from Africa, but it's very un-African like. Most African coffees, right? You roast light, like Ethiopians, Kenyans, and they're usually very lower in body, but higher in acidity and more like fruit and floral. This is like the antithesis of that. Yeah. This is like almost like a Sumatra. It's like very low in acidity, higher in body, and it's got that like chocolate, figgy, it's creamy. The beans are just like fat daddy beans that just roast beautifully. And what I was drinking before, but I already drank it. Dude, I've been rocking it as an espresso, like out of the machine, and it's just sexy. It's just good. It's just good. And one of the reasons we're looking at, Nick is looking at doing another coffee, and I'm just, like I said, the monkey behind the scenes, is that, and I didn't really think about this, but all the current blends are all medium roast, right? The Wiseman, the Tabernacle's a medium, the All In's a medium, and I would say the Upsetters is kind of a light to medium because it uses Jamaican Blue Mountain and a Blue Mountain varietal from Papua New Guinea. But long story short is that nothing in the dark roast. And the only feedback, and we've gotten great feedback from people, right? But the only feedback has been like, hey, I drink really dark coffee. And this coffee's good, but I like dark roasted coffee. So this is kind of the answer for that. But also still good, specialty, sustainable, co-op, Rainforest Alliance, all that good, fuzzy, warm, tree-hugging stuff that people from Connecticut like Nick like, but
which is dark roasted. Which is important, because it is interesting. I did see a very extensive documentary on, this instant market of coffee. And what I didn't realize, is that Vietnam is one of the biggest coffee producers in the world. And the nobody really
Robusta.
knows because it's all the coffee. They're one of the biggest producers for instant coffee. So a lot of the stuff that you're seeing in instant coffee, and it's just terrible quality coffee. And what they're doing to grow this coffee is really messing up the local economies, and like people are just going in and clear cutting, beautiful, pristine areas to grow these terrible coffee. They show people going to market and they had bags with stones in them, and
Jesus,
it's like the worst. But they're doing volume, because there's so many people. The labor costs are nothing.
Nope.
So that was pretty interesting to see, because I had never heard Vietnam as coffee producer, and it being the largest or one of the largest.
No, I think it's like behind Brazil and Colombia, but for Robusta, it's the highest, right? I mean, that's another thing, is that there's really two main strains of coffee, right? There's Camphora, which is Robusta, and then there's Arabica Typica, which is most of what you drink. So when you hear it's 100% Arabica, that's all Layne Coffee, that's all Tabernacle, all of Nick's Foundation coffees. Most of the specialty coffee that you get that doesn't cost $2 is Arabica, because
to put it in cigar terms, Arabica is kind of like long filler.
Yeah,
like in the marketing sense.
Yeah, Arabica is long filler, and then I would actually go less than that. I would say is that Arabica is like a AAA grade Lajero or Viso, where like Camphora Robusta is like the Velato that's like touching the ground, that's got holes in it. Like, it's from the same plant.
Okay.
It's in essence, it just, Robusta, first of all, I wish I should have brought some beans to show you. Arabica beans are more kind of like elongated. Like, you guys probably have never drank Robusta in your life, which hopefully you haven't. These beans are round and they're super dense. And like, for me to roast them, I gotta I'm up around 800 degrees in the roaster to get these things to rock. Like,
wow.
And the difference between Arabica and Robusta is Arabica has taller plants, and Arabica is not as resistant to disease. So that's why a lot of these places like Vietnam and Brazil and others have said, hey, we want a disease-resistant plant. And they've bred that plant to be disease-resistant so they can get volumes. But Arabica, on the other hand, can get, coffee rust and all these other diseases, but it tastes way better. So in that way, it commands a much higher price, right? So Robusta, literally, I'm not even joking with you. When I'm roasting some stuff, and I've roasted stuff from Vietnam and other places, and it smells like burning tires. Like, I'm not even messing with it. I'm being
That
dead
sounds
serious.
delicious.
It's burning rubber tires. And when you taste it, that's what they do with instant coffee is they just roast it to the point where it's just like nothing. And then you just grind it up. And the other thing is Robusta is about 3x as strong in caffeine as Arabica. So if you were to drink the coffee that Layne Coffee does called Mainline, like Tripp, you can talk about it. It actually has a ton of Robusta in it, but it's actually organic Robusta from an island that you would never think of. Should I tell you? I'll tell you. It's Madagascar. That's where they get all the good Robusta. I swear to God. Down in Madagascar, they grow the best Robusta. But anyways, that is really high in caffeine. So if you see a high caffeine blend like, Death Wish or others, that's usually what they're using.
These guys?
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, that's a little bit about coffee varietals.
So Harley Holmes has a coffee question that I don't know the answer. I don't know if you'll know the answer either. How is decaf coffee made?
I'll tell you, there's two ways. There's a chemical process they use, malatoxanderonicide, or however the heck you pronounce it. And basically what they do is they put there's two ways. There's the bad way and the good way. The bad way is, and I sell some of the bad stuff, but only one of them, is they put this chemical in and it basically is not good for you. And it leaches out all of the caffeine and makes it evaporate. And if you were to take that coffee and just grind it up without it being roasted, it would hurt you real bad. But once you roast it, all that bad stuff burns off. That's one way. The other way is called the water process, which there's two different ways they do it.
It would hurt you real bad.
It will hurt you real bad. It's like stuff they poison rats with. Like, it's like no joke.
Wow.
It's bad news. It's not good. So the other way that they do it, which is the better way, but obviously more expensive, is it's called the water process. And there's the Swiss water process and there's the mountain water process, which both those are the exact same, really. Just one's done in Canada and one's done down in Mexico, so they just have different names. But really what they do is they take the very simplistic Logan version without seeing it firsthand is they basically take the water and somehow use like vibrations and shit to get the caffeine out into the water. So it leaves the bean without caffeine, without affecting it. And basically they kind of like dry the bean out a little bit and it pulls out all the caffeine. So you basically have caffeinated water, which then they can use that caffeinated water and they resell it for different things. And it leaves the bean without it. So when you get the beans before they're roasted, they're all shriveled up. And then as you roast them, they get bigger and actually look normal.
Interesting.
It's funky.
So with that process, I know I used to buy when I was in high school and I was obsessed with figuring out the way to get the most caffeine. I used to buy caffeine powder that was they boiled down that caffeinated water.
More or less, yeah.
And that's where most pure caffeine extract kind of stuff comes from, which is interesting. Like that's what they had to, Red Bull and stuff like that.
Yeah, dude, it's savage stuff. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, man. If you're gonna, it's kind of like, I don't know, man.
Hey, Nicky, how we doing, Joe?
If you're gonna go for it, man, just go for it and drink real coffee.
That's what I say. I mean, I don't think I've ever even had like decaf in my house.
I can't say that I ever have either. Because what's the point? It's like, I'm gonna violate. It's like trying to jerk it and not going all the way, man. It's just pointless. It's pointless. It's pointless.
Come on, Logan.
It's pointless. Why even try? Anyway,
You should write a for coffee. You should write a Ryan Heitzke book, but for coffee. You could be the guy.
I could be the guy. But Layne Coffee, it's classy. It's a classy establishment, ran by an unclassy dude.
Some people can't take caffeine, man. Some people are already naturally hyped up.
Yeah, I've actually known a couple people like that like any
that.
amount of caffeine they can't deal with.
Yeah, their heart is like, it's already going, and their blood's already, they're on a whole different wavelength.
Yeah.
They put caffeine in, they're like jumping out of their skin.
I feel that's kind of how Jonathan would be, because he's already kind of always amped up, and then you give him caffeine.
Yeah, there you go.
You put in a lot of caffeine, it's like they're going to be shooting off to the moon.
It's putting gas on a fire, man. Putting gas on a fire. But yeah, so anyways, I'm glad you guys like that blend. So, I mean, TBD on what comes next, but looking at a dark roast option, but then also looking at, I don't know if Nick wants me to tell, but the other thing that's been requested has been, because obviously cigar industry, people have been requesting Cuban coffee. Doing a Cuban coffee style.
Oh, nice.
So, not that that's going to happen, but who knows?
Giddy up.
Yeah, giddy up. Exactly. But I don't know, Nick, talk about what we're thinking, because right now all the coffee's sold purely in B&Ms. It's not sold online through Layne Coffee.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Is like, where
question.
can people watching get coffee from Foundation?
Well,
right now, and we really need to start expanding now, because we're getting kind of bombarded with people wanting to, purchase. So we've been trying to, really support the B&Ms. And, there's a lot of coffee drinking, of course, happening in local cigar shops. So that was the first point, of contact. So now it's time to sort of make it more widely available.
It's true.
So hopefully, Logan, we're going to be able to expand a little bit this year.
Hey, man, I'm happy where we're at, man. I like the low and slow, and then just out of nowhere you go, bam, and you just hit them with.
You're going to start to see too is Foundation events. Like I'll be in Florida next week doing events, so you're going to start seeing cutting lights with coffee and Foundation cigars, and
nice
coffee to be more a part of really the whole experience. At Foundation events particularly, it's just a great pairing, especially for events. So I'm not a huge drinker myself, so I'm always, coffee and a cigar for me is heaven. So.
Yep.
I think that's how a lot of us are.
We're going to keep rocking.
For me, it's been.
And
I know.
I think if we're excited to, if you see the portfolio, Foundation Cigars, it really worked hard on really coming out with blends and brands that really hit a wide spectrum to appeal to all the different consumers' palates and consumers on the market, from, heavier cigars, Rolls Royces, High Clear Castle. We have Charter Oak for the everyday. We even have an infused cigar, Wiseman Maduro, the Tabernacle. So I really want to also do that with the coffee and appeal, hence the, working on darker roasts, the Cuban styles, and, something for everybody. Everybody's got different likes and dislikes, and their tastes change and evolve. And so it's just about, offering a good variety of products for people.
It's true.
Right on.
I think Nick probably hates me because I come up with all these crazy ideas, and then Nick's like, "No, Logan, we cannot do that." Because the problem is it's like trying to, and that's the thing I'm scared about, right? Because it's not meant to be rude, but like a lot of the people in the coffee world haven't been exposed, or in the cigar world haven't been exposed to, specialty high-end coffee, right?
Yeah.
They're used to drinking other stuff. So it's like they see the bags at the price, which they're still not that expensive, but they see it and they're like, wow, my other coffee's cheaper. But it's then when if I was going around to all these events making coffee, I could easily explain to you the difference and show you and make you a good cup of coffee. But and that's why we've taken a long time and spent, the last 6 months, Nick and I talking through how do we, for a rep who's maybe not a coffee guy, how do we control that process so he delivers the best coffee experience to someone at an event where it's done in the right way and controlled? But do we grind the coffee before? Do we buy a grinder for the guy? So there's been so much stuff we've been working on. Like Nick said, you'll start seeing stuff drop very quickly.
It's the same thing with like guys, somebody coming into, a cigar shop and then giving him something completely different out of his range of what he likes. You know what I mean? That completely changes your experience. And, I'm learning myself, being in Nicaragua for so long, it's the coffee culture there is really, in the local market is really, I think just now growing because a lot of the local market is used to, drinking locally, a lot of the instants and whatnot, because a lot of the great coffee is, exported. Kind of thing with the cigars. So Matagalpa, where the Wiseman blend comes from, I mean, a lot of that, there's a lot of farms there that, they're direct with Whole Foods and stuff like that. But the local market, kind of difficult to, so I'm even learning myself, I'm a mocha pot guy and I've been doing that, have it, my setup in Nicaragua, but, just working with Logan and learning, it does completely change your experience. And experimenting with different coffees is, I think, key. So we just want people to have the right experience, which is crucial. So it's great.
And a lot of people, it seems like a lot of people think of themselves as like a coffee guy because they go to, I don't know, whatever their local coffee house is and get espresso there. But it's kind of like cigars where there's only so much that you can learn when you're not knee deep in it. And then once you start, with the scale and the gooseneck pot and all that stuff, it's very similar to cigars where if you just go in and smoke a cigar once a month at the cigar shop, you're not going to have the same experience as like your palate's going to be different if you're smoking every day, if you're smoking different stuff all the time.
Right.
That's very true.
I mean, you have more of a coffee culture, though, too, of, the mass scale of, like, cigarette smoking.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fantastic analogy.
Than smoking a cigar and the ceremony of smoking a cigar. Whereas, the Dunkin' Donuts fix and the, this and that, it's, a habitual, fill the need. Whereas when you get into it, it's really a craft,
Right.
Yeah, you may like coffee, but you're not getting the full experience unless you're, getting something craft made like this.
I think what happens a lot of times, and the same with the cigar world, sometimes people get a little intimidated. You know what I mean? Like, especially from Logan, he's an intimidating guy.
I can be a little aggressive.
Okay, but they don't have the level of experience and a lot of terminology, the words and this and that. So I think it's our job. Especially too in the cigar world and amongst the guys that have this knowledge, is to make it accessible for people to really expand their knowledge and grow. Where they feel comfortable and it's fun. It should be fun, and it should be a journey of learning. And for me, it never stops, especially with tobacco.
Yeah.
Once you think that's when you're done. And you don't grow and learn. And to me, that process is exciting. So that's why the coffee, it's been a part of my day, on the production floor, looking at constantly, within SLA, there's an internal discussion amongst the tobacco guys when you go to different tobacco houses, who has the best coffee and, which coffee to kind of stay away from and things like that. So it's great. It's a fun process to be learning more about. So it's been exciting.
It's been good, man.
So step by step.
Next year, I can tell you this: at IPCPR, Nick will have proper electricity because I'm bringing the rain coffee-wise next year.
We're gonna have a whole.
I'm excited.
Station.
I want my own station, my Mad Lab. You guys just keep the people away while I make stuff.
I had no electricity. It was hilarious.
It was ridiculous.
This guy came up. He was duct taping to the back of the
it was insane.
bar, like his little rig and the whole hookup. The power goes down once, and I my head.
You started yelling at me.
I
started, you need a coffee. You turned off my reggae.
I'm like, listen, because it was such a build up to the show, and I was
stressful.
A lot went into the booth this year, of course. So I was like, oh man, the grid went down. I have a video of Logan off,
Oh yeah.
of course there was 2 beautiful columns in front of our booth, and he's off to the side and got the whole brew station going on the side of a column.
On the floor.
On the floor. Delicia Cigar Vixen was over there. It was hilarious. And I came up and was trying to make up for it. And then Logan's yelling at me.
Because you told me to get out of the booth.
I was like, get out of here.
You're like, get that crap out of here. And I said, well, Nick, how am I going to make coffee, sir? I don't know how to solve this problem. I don't know how to solve this problem. And I was literally sitting over there, coffee maker, grinder, big jug. Like, dude, I even thought I'm like, how am I going to get water to this booth? So I bought a big 5-gallon portable thing that John and Tripp help fill up every day. And then I bought a filter. I had all this stuff laid out over there making coffee just to serve.
But that's a tough job because you're the coffee guy. That's like the war in the morning. I am like the abominable snowman when I wake up.
You're a little cranky. You're a little cranky.
I'm in another dimension between worlds,
Oh, yeah.
So it's, I didn't get my coffee yet and the power was coming down.
Oh, yeah. I got the event didn't open until 10. Nick's at 9:15. Where are you? I need my coffee.
Everybody needs their coffee.
Well, and then
he's got to be there at 8.
Nick's booth became the coffee stop for everyone.
I mean,
everyone within
coffee to Max,
10
Casa
booths.
Fernandez, Illusion just swooped over. Dude, I mean, it was everybody. It was a spot, man. But we're going to do it. You think it was good last year? Next level. 2018.
Dude, we got the next level. The next level everything.
It's going to be awesome.
I'm looking forward to it.
You're not invited.
Logan's
I'll weasel my way in there.
He's got to dress up as a coffee bean to serve the. That's what he's going to be.
Hey, man. We sell 20,000 bags. I'll dress up however you want, Nick.
Coffee bean's fine. You should
All right,
dress
guys.
mocha pot.
Yeah, my nemesis. Nah, I'm okay. I'm okay,
I'm
dude.
telling you, I'll teach you, man. We'll figure it out.
It's too tough.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. This one we were all over the place, man.
It was good though.
That's what happens when you're
I'm
drinking
around.
4 cups of coffee
That's
on
when
the
you
show.
Get Melillo and Logan involved.
Yeah, exactly.
It was fun though. Like, we
Good.
like to keep it casual. We don't like it to be too structured.
You gotta flow with it.
Exactly. Just roll with it. That's how we do. But thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for listening. We didn't make it to some of the ads, but that's all right. I can go put them in post. You Facebook people are lucky that you're not going to have to watch them. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys out there. Everybody in the armed forces out there doing things we're not built to do. And with Sharing Our Pairings, we normally say we want you to drink better, but we want you to drink less. But I mean, this is coffee. You can drink as much as you want.
Yeah, drink as much as you want.
Until you drop.
Yeah, drink till you drop. Let it rage, buddy.